The champagne flute felt cold against my palm, condensation pooling at the base where my thumb pressed too hard. Around me, the restaurant hummed with the kind of expensive noise that comes from celebrating achievements. Clinking silverware, polite laughter. The soft jazz playing just loud enough to feel sophisticated. Iris's graduation dinner. My daughter, 22 years old, radiant in a navy dress she'd picked out herself, her diploma tucked carefully in her bag like a talisman of everything she'd worked for. Victor stood. My husband of 28 years rose from his seat at the head of our table, wine glass in hand, and I thought, stupidly, desperately, that he was going to toast our daughter. That maybe, just this once, he'd remember what it felt like to be proud of something real. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he used in business meetings. Our friends leaned in, Daniel and Rachel Chun, the Pattersons, my sister Diana. Even Natalie Wells sat there, her young face carefully composed, her hand resting too casually near Victor's empty chair. I knew what was coming. I'd known for 3 months. "This is a night of new beginnings," Victor continued. "Iris is starting her life as a graduate, ready to take on the world. And He paused, glanced at me, and I saw it. The flicker of something that might have been guilt or might have been relief. "I've decided it's time for me to start fresh too. Catherine and I have grown apart. We want different things. After much thought, I've decided to pursue a new chapter. Separately." The table went silent. Someone's fork clattered against china. Iris's face drained of color, her eyes finding mine across the white tablecloth, the centerpiece of peonies suddenly obscene in their cheerfulness. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg or throw my drink or slap him like maybe I should have. Instead, I reached into my purse, calm, deliberate, and pulled out the cream-colored envelope I'd been carrying for 2 weeks. I placed it beside Victor's plate, right next to his half-finished salmon. "You'll want to read that tonight," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. Victor stared at the envelope. Natalie leaned forward slightly, curiosity breaking through her carefully maintained expression of sympathy. Around us, our friends, people who'd known about the affair for months, who'd seen Victor and Natalie at hotels and restaurants and never once called to warn me, sat frozen in their complicity. I stood, leaned down and kissed Iris's forehead. She smelled like the perfume I'd given her for her birthday, jasmine and something sweeter. "I love you," I whispered. "This isn't about you. Remember that." Then I walked out, through the restaurant with its low lighting and tasteful artwork, past the hostess station where a young woman smiled automatically, out into the parking lot where the June heat hit me like stepping into bathwater. My car was parked 3 rows back. I made it halfway there before my knees started to shake. But I didn't stop, didn't turn around, just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, the way I'd been doing for 3 months. The way I'd been doing really for years. 3 months earlier, I'd been sitting in the home office Victor rarely entered, working late on a client's portfolio. I specialized in helping people transition through major life changes: retirement, inheritance, divorce. The irony wasn't lost on me now. It was past midnight, the house quiet except for the hum of my laptop and the occasional creak of settling wood. I was reviewing our joint accounts, something I did quarterly, habit from 3 decades of managing our finances while Victor chased his various business ventures. He'd tried real estate development, tech consulting, even a brief stint trying to launch an artisanal coffee brand. Each venture needed capital. Each time, I'd been the one to calculate risk, move money, keep us afloat. That's when I saw it. A transfer I didn't recognize. $5,000 to an account number I'd never seen before. I sat back in my chair, stared at the screen. Probably nothing. A business expense Victor forgot to mention. Except Victor always mentioned expenses, because he needed me to move money from savings to cover them. I scrolled back. Another transfer, 2 weeks earlier. $3,500. Same account. My mouth went dry. I spent the next 4 hours going through every statement I could access. Bank accounts, credit cards, even the retirement funds we'd built over 28 years of marriage. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in solution. Slow, then suddenly devastatingly clear. Systematic transfers. Small enough not to trigger alerts. Large enough that over 14 months, they totaled nearly $60,000. Money moving from our joint accounts into one I'd never heard of, in increments that suggested someone knew exactly how to hide them. I should have confronted him. That's what the old Catherine would have done. Walked into the bedroom where Victor slept soundly, woken him up, demanded an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the lateness of the hour. Maybe it was the cold, sinking feeling in my stomach that said if I asked, the answer would destroy everything. Or maybe it was 30 years of financial training that said, never confront without knowing the full picture. I opened a new document, started a spreadsheet, began to build a case. The credit card statements came next. I requisitioned them the following morning, using the financial power of attorney Victor had given me years ago when he'd been too busy with his latest venture to handle paperwork. Amazing what you can access when you're authorized. Dinner at Celestial, the new French place downtown. $430. I'd never been to Celestial. Victor had told me he was meeting investors that night. Jewelry from Harrison's. $1,800. I hadn't received jewelry from Victor in 6 years. Not since the pearl earrings for our anniversary that I'd picked out myself and he'd reimbursed me for. A weekend at the Grandview Resort. The suite with the lake view. $3,200. Victor had told me it was a business conference in Seattle. I'd believed him because believing was easier than questioning, and we'd been married so long that questioning felt like betraying something fundamental. But it was the text messages that finally broke through my denial. I'd never been the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. Privacy mattered. Trust mattered. Except Victor had left his phone on the kitchen counter one morning while he showered, and it lit up with a notification. Can't wait for tonight. Wear the red dress. From Natalie. Natalie Wells, who'd been part of our social circle for 2 years, who'd attended our Christmas party, who'd sat in our living room drinking wine and complimenting the renovations we'd done on the kitchen. My hands didn't shake when I picked up his phone. The passcode was Iris's birthday. He'd never changed it. Security through complacency. I scrolled back. Days became weeks, became months. Messages about meetings that weren't meetings, about a future they were planning, about the apartment they'd looked at together, about how much longer Victor would need to handle things with me, about timing everything around Iris's graduation so he could make a clean break. One message stopped me cold. Victor to Natalie, 2 months ago. She'll never see it coming. I'll have everything moved out by Sunday. We can start fresh. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Went to work. Smiled at my clients. Came home and made dinner. Asked Victor about his day and listened to him lie about meetings and conference calls and business opportunities. And every night, after he fell asleep, I documented everything. Bank statements printed and organized by date. Screenshots of text messages saved to a secure cloud drive. Credit card receipts highlighted in yellow. Property searches. I found those in his browser history. For apartments in the city, 2-bedroom places with modern kitchens and floor-to-ceiling windows. Places that cost more than we'd ever spent on rent. Places that required the kind of money Victor thought he'd have access to after leaving me. Except Victor had forgotten something. Something crucial. I found the prenuptial agreement in his desk drawer, filed under legal documents, in a folder he probably hadn't opened in a decade. We'd signed it 28 years ago, right before the wedding. Victor had insisted on it. He'd been starting his first business, had dreams of building an empire, wanted to protect his future earnings. I'd been young enough to be hurt by it, practical enough to understand. So I'd signed. But I'd also read it carefully. That's what you did when you majored in finance, when you'd been trained to see the fine print. And the fine print said something Victor had apparently forgotten in the intervening decades. Paragraph 7. The fidelity clause. If either party engaged in an extramarital affair, the prenuptial agreement's asset protection became null and void. More than that, the injured party retained rights to the marital home, the majority of joint investments, and 70% of retirement accounts. Victor had insisted on that clause. He'd told me then that loyalty mattered more than anything, that he wanted me to know he'd never stray, that this was his promise in legal terms. I'd believed him. Sitting in my office at 3 a.m, reading that clause by the light of my desk lamp, I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not grief, not yet. Something colder. Something that tasted like clarity. I called a lawyer the next morning. Marcus Ashford's office was in one of those converted brownstones downtown. The kind with original hardwood floors and modern furniture that cost more than it looked like it should. He was 50-something, silver hair, the kind of calm competence that came from handling messy divorces for 3 decades. I'd spread everything across his conference table. Bank statements, text messages, credit card receipts, the prenuptial agreement. He'd looked through it all in silence, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When he finished, he'd leaned back in his chair and studied me. Most clients come in emotional, he'd said. Crying, angry, wanting revenge. You came prepared. I had 3 months, I'd replied. I wasn't going to waste them on tears. My coffee cup had rattled slightly when I set it down. My hands were shaking, had been shaking since I walked in. But my voice stayed steady. Marcus had picked up the prenuptial agreement. This fidelity clause is ironclad. With the documentation you have, there's no question. The affair is proven. The financial deception is proven. You'll retain the house, the majority of assets. He'll be lucky to keep his business. Good. There's something you should know, though. Divorce is a process. It takes time. Even with evidence this strong, we're looking at months of proceedings, court dates, negotiations. I want to file before he announces it, I'd interrupted. Marcus had looked up. Announces what? He's planning to leave me at our daughter's graduation dinner. 2 weeks from now. I found the reservation he made. Table for 12 at Marcello's. He's invited all our friends. He's going to make a speech about new beginnings and fresh starts and make it sound noble. And you want to. I want to serve him the papers before he gets the chance. I want control of the narrative. He thinks he's leaving me. I want him to understand that I left first. Marcus had smiled then. Small, approving. We can do that. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Meetings with Marcus. Paperwork signed in triplicate. Financial disclosures prepared. A court date set for a preliminary hearing. Everything documented, organized, ready. At home, I performed normalcy. Made dinner. Asked about Victor's day. Listened to him lie. Helped Iris plan her graduation party. Smiled for photos. At night, I lay beside the man I'd been married to for 28 years and felt nothing. That was the worst part. Not the anger or the grief. Those would come later, I knew. But the nothing. The absolute absence of feeling when I looked at him. Like 28 years had been erased, replaced by this stranger who'd systematically stolen from our joint accounts and planned his exit like a business merger. Iris called the night before graduation, excited, nervous. Mom, are you proud of me? So proud, I'd said and meant it. You worked so hard for this. I can't believe it's finally here. Tomorrow everything changes. Yes, I'd agreed. It does. I'd almost told her then. Almost said, your father is leaving. I'm divorcing him. Tomorrow at dinner, everything you think you know about our family is going to shatter. But I didn't. Because Iris deserved one day, one single day. That was about her achievement, not her father's betrayal. So I'd said, I love you, sweetie. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's your day. After we hung up, I'd sat in the dark living room, looking at the photos on the mantel. Our wedding day, Victor young and confident, me 26 and believing in forever. Iris as a baby, then a toddler, then growing up in increments captured in silver frames. Family vacations, holidays, ordinary Tuesdays that had seemed unremarkable at the time, but now felt precious in their normalcy. I'd taken my wedding photo down, turned it face down on the side table. Tomorrow, I'd thought. Tomorrow it all ends. What would you do if you discovered your partner had been planning to leave you for over a year? Drop your answer in the comments below. Graduation morning arrived bright and clear. I wore the blue dress Iris liked, the one she said made my eyes look younger. Victor wore a suit. We drove to the university separately. He had a meeting first, he said. Another lie. I knew he was texting Natalie, coordinating their appearance at dinner. The ceremony was long, hot, filled with speeches about futures and opportunities and the courage to pursue dreams. When they called Iris's name, she walked across that stage with her head high, diploma in hand, and I cried. Real tears. Pride mixed with grief for everything she was about to lose. Victor checked his phone throughout. I watched him type messages, delete them, type again. His leg bounced, nervous energy or anticipation. Maybe both. Diana leaned over during one of the speeches. My sister, 3 years older, sharper around the edges than I'd ever been. You okay? She whispered. I nodded. The lie felt necessary. You look tense. Just thinking about dinner, I said. Which was true. After the ceremony, photos. Iris with her diploma, Iris with her friends, Iris between Victor and me. The three of us smiling like we were still a family. My face hurt from holding the expression. Victor's hand on my shoulder felt like a brand. "See you at the restaurant," he said, kissing my cheek. Performance for anyone watching. Then he left, and I could breathe again. Diana grabbed my arm. "Okay, seriously. What's going on?" "Not here," I said. "Later. I promise." She'd looked at me hard, the way only a sister can, seeing past the makeup and the smile to the person underneath. But she'd nodded. Later, then. I'd driven to Marcello's alone, rehearsing calm in my mind. The envelope was in my purse. The divorce papers had been filed that morning. Marcus had texted me confirmation while I sat in the auditorium watching Iris accept her diploma. Everything was in motion now. No going back. The restaurant was exactly as Victor had described in his messages to Natalie. High ceilings, exposed brick. The kind of place where entrees cost $50 and the wine list required a sommelier. Our table was in the corner, round and large enough for 12. Victor had spared no expense for his grand exit. Everyone was already there when I arrived. The Chens, the Pattersons, Diana and her husband Robert. And Natalie sitting 2 seats from Victor. Close enough to matter, but far enough to maintain plausible deniability. She was 29. I'd looked her up after finding the messages, done the kind of deep internet dive that would have embarrassed me if anyone had known. 29, worked in marketing, had an Instagram full of carefully curated photos of avocado toast and sunset cocktails and inspirational quotes about living your truth. She'd smiled at me when I sat down. "Catherine, you must be so proud of Iris." "I am," I'd said, and looked at Victor, who was studying his menu like it contained secrets. Iris arrived 15 minutes later, glowing, surrounded by friends she'd invited to join us. The table filled with noise, congratulations, laughter, the kind of joy that comes from earned achievement. I ordered wine, drank it too fast, ordered more. The food came. Appetizers, entrees, the kind of meal that takes 2 hours and costs what most people make in a week. Victor played the proud father, asked Iris about her plans, listened to her talk about the job offer she'd received, the apartment she'd found with roommates. I watched him perform, watched Natalie watch him, watched our friends pretend they didn't know what was coming. And then Victor stood. The room seemed to tilt slightly when Victor rose from his seat. Or maybe that was the wine. I'd lost count after the 3rd glass. His chair scraped against the polished floor, the sound cutting through conversation like a blade. Around the table, voices quieted. Forks paused midair. Everyone turned to look at him, expecting the toast he'd promised, the proud father celebrating his daughter's achievement. I knew better. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," Victor began, and there it was. That particular tone he used when he wanted to sound both humble and important. I'd heard it 1,000 times over 28 years. Business presentations, family gatherings. That time he'd tried to convince me we should refinance the house to fund his coffee venture. This is a special night. Iris has accomplished something remarkable, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become. Iris beamed at him. God, she beamed. My daughter, who still believed her father was capable of pure gestures. "But tonight isn't just about endings and beginnings for Iris," Victor continued. His eyes flickered to me, then away. "Coward. It's also about new chapters for all of us. Life is about growth, about recognizing when we've outgrown certain situations, about having the courage to pursue what makes us happy." Diana's hand found mine under the table. Her grip was tight, nails digging in slightly. She knew something was wrong. Sisters always know. "Catherine and I have had a wonderful 28 years together," Victor said, and I almost laughed. Wonderful. As if wonderful was measured in years of me managing finances while he chased dreams, of me postponing my own career while he reinvented himself every 3 years, of me believing in partnership while he planned his exit strategy with a woman young enough to be our daughter. But sometimes people grow in different directions. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is acknowledge that and move forward separately. The Pattersons shifted in their seats. Rachel Chen's face went carefully blank, the expression of someone who'd known this was coming and had chosen silence over friendship. Natalie's posture changed subtly, straightening, preparing to be acknowledged. Iris's smile faltered. "Dad, what are you?" "I've decided it's time for me to start fresh," Victor said, his voice gaining confidence, like he was convincing himself as much as us. "To pursue new opportunities, new relationships, a new chapter. Catherine and I both deserve to be happy, and we've agreed that happiness looks different for each of us now. We'd agreed. As if I'd been part of this decision. As if the 14 months of affair and financial theft had been some kind of mutual understanding. The table was silent. Iris's face had gone white, her eyes darting between Victor and me, searching for confirmation that this wasn't happening, that her father hadn't just announced the destruction of our family at her graduation dinner like it was an item on a business agenda. I reached for my purse. My hands were steady. That surprised me. 3 months of preparation had built something in me I didn't recognize. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper stock, the kind lawyers used for important documents. I'd sealed it myself that morning, watching the glue settle into place like a promise. I placed it beside Victor's plate, right next to his half-eaten salmon that had cost $42 and now sat congealing in its reduction sauce. "You'll want to read that tonight," I said. My voice carried across the table, clear and level. Not angry, not tearful, just factual. Victor stared at the envelope. His expression shifted, confusion, then something that might have been fear. "Catherine, what?" "Tonight," I repeated. I turned to Iris, whose eyes were filling with tears, mascara already starting to run in dark tracks down her cheeks. I leaned across the table and kissed her forehead, tasted the salt of her tears on my lips. "I love you. This isn't about you. None of this is about you. Remember that." Then I stood, picked up my purse, looked at Victor one more time. This man I'd slept beside for 28 years, whose child I'd raised, whose dreams I'd funded, whose lies I'd finally stopped believing. "Congratulations on your new chapter," I said. I walked out of Marcello's with my head high, past the other diners who were politely pretending not to stare, past the hostess station where a young woman with perfect lipstick smiled automatically, through the heavy glass doors into the parking lot where the June evening had finally started to cool. My car was 3 rows back. I made it halfway there before my knees turned to water. The pavement seemed to ripple under my feet. I grabbed the side mirror of someone's BMW, held on, breathed through my mouth because my nose had stopped working. But I didn't cry, didn't turn back. Just stood there in the parking lot while my body tried to catch up with what my mind had done, while 28 years of marriage officially ended in the time it took to place an envelope on a table. My phone started buzzing. "Diana." I let it go to voicemail. Then a text. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I typed back, "Home. I'm fine. Tell Iris I love her." Another buzz. "Diana again. What was in the envelope?" I didn't answer that one. The drive home passed in fragments. Stoplights. Turn signals. The radio playing some song about summer and freedom that felt obscene in its cheerfulness. Our house. My house now, technically, according to the papers Marcus had filed, sat at the end of a tree-lined street in the kind of neighborhood where people still walked their dogs in the evening and kids played basketball in driveways. Victor's car wasn't there. He'd gone back to the restaurant, or to Natalie's apartment, or to hell for all I cared. Inside, everything looked the same. The furniture we'd picked out together, the paint colors I'd chosen, the photos on the walls documenting a life that had apparently been a lie for longer than I wanted to calculate. I set my purse on the kitchen counter, poured a glass of water, drank it standing at the sink, staring out the window at our backyard where Iris had learned to ride a bike and we'd hosted 4th of July barbecues, and Victor had proposed to me 29 years ago on a summer night that felt like it belonged to different people. My phone rang. Iris this time. I answered. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mom." Her voice broke on the word. "Mom, what's happening?" "Dad's saying, he's saying you knew, that you agreed to this. But that envelope. Can you come over tomorrow? We need to talk, but not tonight. Tonight should still be about your graduation." "I don't care about graduation. I care about why my father just blew up our family in front of everyone we know." I closed my eyes. I know, baby. But I can't explain this over the phone. Can you trust me until tomorrow?" Silence. Then, "Did you know he was going to do that?" "Yes. And you let him?" "I needed him to show everyone who he really is." More silence. "There's more. There's something you're not telling me." "Tomorrow. I promise. I'll tell you everything tomorrow." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there holding the phone, listening to the dead air, feeling the full weight of what I'd just done settle on my shoulders like a physical thing. The house was too quiet. I turned on the television, some mindless cooking show, just to fill the silence. Sat on the couch, Victor's spot, the cushion worn in the shape of his body from years of him sitting there watching sports and checking his phone and pretending to be present. An hour passed. Then two. Around 10:30, I heard his car in the driveway. The front door opened. Slammed. Victor's footsteps heavy in the hallway. He appeared in the living room doorway, the envelope crumpled in his fist, his face red with fury. Divorce papers? His voice was too loud for the space. You served me divorce papers at our daughter's graduation dinner? I turned off the television. Looked at him calmly. You were planning to announce our separation at our daughter's graduation dinner. I just filed first. This is different. This is you blindsided me. I blindsided you. I laughed. Couldn't help it. That's interesting, coming from someone who's been planning his exit for over a year. He stopped. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? Sit down, Victor. I don't want to sit down. I want to know what the hell you think you're doing. We can handle this like adults. We don't need lawyers and court dates and... Sit down. Something in my voice made him listen. He sank into his usual spot on the couch, the envelope still clutched in his hand. I stayed in the armchair across from him, the coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. The prenuptial agreement, I said. Do you remember it? Of course I remember it, but that expired after 20 years. My lawyer told me. Your lawyer was wrong, or you misunderstood. Probably the latter, knowing you. I pulled a folder from beside the chair. I'd prepared this, had it ready, knew this conversation was coming. I opened it to the marked page and slid it across the coffee table. Paragraph 7. The fidelity clause. Read it. He picked up the document. I watched his eyes scan the page, watched the moment he understood. The agreement states for the duration of the marriage, I said quietly. Not for 20 years. For however long we're married. And the fidelity clause is very clear about what happens if either party has an affair. Catherine. 14 months, Victor. You've been with Natalie for 14 months. I have bank statements showing systematic transfers to a secret account. I have credit card receipts for dinners and jewelry and hotel rooms. I have text messages, hundreds of them, planning your new life together. Planning how you were going to leave me right after Iris's graduation. How you'd have your things moved out by Sunday. Remember that message? I do. I've read it about 50 times. His face went gray. The envelope slipped from his fingers, landed on the floor between us. I hired a forensic accountant. I continued. You've moved almost $60,000 from our joint accounts over the past year. Money I earned, money we saved together, money meant for our retirement. You've been furnishing your future with Natalie using funds that belong to both of us. That's financial fraud, Victor. On top of adultery. You can't. I can. I did. The papers were filed this morning. Our joint accounts are frozen as of 6 p.m. today. The house remains in my name during proceedings. You have until Friday to remove your personal belongings. If you're not out by then, I'll have the locks changed and your things will be on the lawn. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the Catherine he'd known. The one who'd managed his finances and raised his child and believed his lies, had died somewhere between finding those bank transfers and placing that envelope beside his plate. I loved you, he said, and had the audacity to sound wounded. No, you didn't. You loved what I did for you. You loved having someone to manage the practical parts of life, while you chased whatever made you feel important. You loved the security I provided while you took risks. But you didn't love me, Victor. If you had, you wouldn't have spent 14 months planning how to leave me while I slept beside you. Natalie makes me feel. I don't care what Natalie makes you feel. That's not my problem anymore. He stood, started pacing. The room suddenly felt too small for his anger. You're being vindictive. You're doing this because you're hurt and you want revenge. I'm doing this because you stole from me. From us. From our daughter's future. That $60,000? That was supposed to help Iris with her student loans. But you spent it on your girlfriend. That stopped him. I was going to pay it back. With what? Your failing consulting business? The one that hasn't turned a profit in 2 years? The one I've been subsidizing with my income while you pretended to be a successful entrepreneur. His hands curled into fists. You've always looked down on me. Always thought you were smarter, better with money, more practical. I am better with money. That's not an insult, that's a fact. And instead of appreciating that I kept us afloat while you played businessman, you resented me for it. You resented me for being good at something you weren't. So you found someone young and impressed by your ambition instead of exhausted by your failures. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Victor. It wasn't fair when you started sleeping with Natalie while I was working 60-hour weeks to keep our finances stable. It wasn't fair when you took our money to fund your affair. It wasn't fair when you planned to humiliate me in front of our friends and family. So don't talk to me about fair. He sank back onto the couch, looked older suddenly, the gray at his temples more pronounced, the lines around his mouth deeper. What happens now? Now you pack your things. You find somewhere else to live. And we let the lawyers handle the rest. Catherine, please. We can work this out. We don't need to do this publicly, go through courts. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the audio file I'd saved. Hit play. Victor's voice filled the room, tinny through the phone speaker but unmistakable. She'll never see it coming. I'll have everything moved out by Sunday. We can start fresh, just like we planned. Natalie's voice younger, excited. Are you sure? What if she fights it? She won't. Catherine's too practical to make a scene. She'll accept it and move on. That's who she is. I stopped the recording. You were wrong about that. His face had gone white. Where did you get that? Your phone. You left it unlocked one morning. I forwarded the messages to myself, along with about 200 others. They're all with my attorney now. Timestamps, locations, everything. You were very thorough in your documentation, Victor. Made my lawyer's job much easier. He stood abruptly. You violated my privacy. You violated our marriage. I'd say we're even, but we're not. Because I have the law on my side, and you have nothing but a crumpled envelope and a girlfriend who's about to find out you're not nearly as wealthy as you pretended to be. Natalie loves me. Natalie loves the idea of you. Wait until she finds out about the frozen accounts. Wait until she realizes you can't afford that apartment you were planning to rent together. How long do you think her love will last when you're crashing on a friend's couch? He grabbed his car keys from the coffee table, headed for the door, stopped in the doorway and turned back. You're going to regret this. No, I said. I'm not. He left. The door didn't slam this time, just closed with a quiet click that felt more final than any amount of yelling. I sat in the silent house and waited for the tears to come. But they didn't. Instead, I felt empty, hollowed out, like someone had reached inside and removed something essential, leaving only the shape where it used to be. My phone buzzed. Diana, on my way over. Don't argue. 20 minutes later, my sister was at the door with a bottle of wine and a box of the good chocolates from that expensive place downtown. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. He opened the envelope, she said. Not a question. He opened it. We sat in the kitchen. Diana poured wine into mugs because I hadn't bothered with actual glasses. She didn't ask questions right away, just sat there being present, being solid, being what sisters are supposed to be. Iris is a mess, she finally said. She's at my house. Robert's with her. She wants to know what's going on. I'll tell her tomorrow. She thinks you ambushed Victor, that you knew he was going to make that speech, and you served him papers to embarrass him. I did know, and I did serve him papers, but not to embarrass him, to protect myself. Diana sipped her wine. Catherine, what happened? The real story. Not whatever performance that was at the restaurant. So I told her. All of it. The bank transfers, the secret account, the text messages planning their future, the prenuptial agreement's fidelity clause, the 14 months of systematic betrayal. Diana's face went through several expressions, shock, rage, disgust, before settling on something that looked like grudging respect. You investigated him for 3 months and didn't tell anyone? I couldn't. Not until I had everything I needed. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. That's very cold, Catherine. Yes, it is. She studied me. You're different. Since I got here. You're different than you were this morning. This morning I was still pretending. Now I don't have to. And how does that feel? I thought about it. Tried to find words for the hollow space where my marriage used to be, for the strange lightness that came with burning down everything I'd built. Like standing in a house after a fire. Everything's gone, but at least you can see the sky now. Diana nodded slowly. Very poetic. Also possibly concerning. I'm not having a breakdown. I know. That's what concerns me. You just ended your 28-year marriage in the time it took to order dessert. And you're sitting here quoting metaphors about fires and sky. Where's the crying? The anger? The throwing his clothes out the window? I was angry for 3 months. I cried every night into my pillow so he wouldn't hear. I already had my breakdown, Diana. You just didn't see it because I had it privately while I built my case. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What can I do? Keep Iris tonight. I'll come over tomorrow morning and explain everything. She deserves to hear it from me, not from whatever version Victor's going to tell. He's going to tell her you're vindictive and crazy. Probably. But I have documentation. Text messages, bank statements, recordings. If she wants proof, I have proof. Diana left around midnight. I locked the door behind her, set the alarm, something I'd never bothered with when Victor lived here, and went upstairs to the bedroom we'd shared for 28 years. His packed suitcases were still in the closet. I'd found them 3 weeks ago, hidden behind his off-season clothes, packed and ready, waiting for this exact moment. I pulled them out, dragged them into the hallway, left them by the front door where he'd see them whenever he came back for his things. Then I went back to the bedroom, stripped the sheets, put on fresh ones, threw his pillow across the room, claimed the whole bed as mine for the first time in nearly 3 decades. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. No Victor snoring, no warmth of another body, just silence and space and the strange, terrifying freedom of being alone. My phone buzzed one more time. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Catherine Monroe? A woman's voice. Young. Upset. Who is this? It's Natalie. Natalie Wells. I need to talk to you about Victor. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? Tell us your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about resilience and starting over. I sat up in bed, every muscle suddenly tense. How did you get this number? From Victor's phone. Look, I know this is weird, but I need to understand what's happening. He came to my apartment an hour ago completely unhinged, saying you froze all the accounts, that you're taking everything, that you've been planning this for months. Is that true? The audacity. The sheer breathtaking audacity of this woman who'd been sleeping with my husband for over a year, calling me at midnight to ask for my side of the story. Yes, I said simply. It's true. Silence on the other end. Then, he told me you'd agreed to the separation, that you both wanted this, that it was mutual and amicable. He lied. But at the restaurant, you seemed so calm. You didn't cry or yell or... I didn't cry because I'd already cried. I didn't yell because I'd already filed for divorce that morning. I was calm because I'd spent 3 months preparing for exactly what happened tonight. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. 3 months. You knew for 3 months. I found the first suspicious bank transfer in March. After that, I found everything else. The texts, the hotel receipts, the apartment searches, the plans to leave me right after my daughter's graduation. All of it. Oh my God. Her voice cracked. He told me. He said you didn't care anymore, that the marriage had been dead for years, that you'd be relieved when he finally ended it. Natalie, why are you calling me? Because nothing he's saying makes sense. He's pacing around my apartment talking about lawyers and prenups and how you've ruined everything. And I'm trying to understand how we went from planning our future this morning to him telling me we can't afford the apartment we picked out because you froze everything. The apartment you picked out costs $3,500 a month. Victor's business loses money. Without access to our joint accounts and my income, he can't afford it. But he said, he lied. About a lot of things, including, I'm guessing, how much money he actually has. Another long silence. The prenup. He keeps talking about a fidelity clause. What does that mean? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. It means that because he had an affair, he forfeits his rights to the majority of our marital assets. The house, the retirement accounts, most of our investments. He gets his failing business, and whatever he can prove he earned separately. Which isn't much. Jesus. She sounded like she was crying now. He told me he had money. He showed me his business accounts, said he was successful, that we'd have this amazing life together. Was that all a lie too? His business accounts are subsidized by my income, have been for 2 years. Without me managing our finances and covering his losses, Victor is essentially broke. I need to go. Natalie, wait. I surprised myself by saying it. How old are you? 29. Why? Because you're young enough to recover from this. You made a bad choice, sleeping with a married man. But you don't have to compound it by staying with someone who lied to you about everything that matters. You're giving me advice? After I slept with your husband. I'm giving you the same advice I'd give any of my financial clients in your situation. Cut your losses. Walk away. Don't let someone else's dishonesty define your next decade. She hung up without responding. I set the phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. Natalie had called me. Victor's mistress had called me for the truth because she'd finally realized Victor was a liar. The irony tasted bitter. Sleep didn't come easily. I dozed in fragments, waking every hour to check my phone, half expecting more calls or texts or some new crisis. But the phone stayed silent. The house stayed quiet. And eventually, around 5 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely and went downstairs to make coffee. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the kitchen in shades of pink and gold. I stood at the window with my coffee mug, watching the neighborhood wake up. The Hendersons across the street leaving for their morning run. The newspaper delivery truck making its rounds. Life continuing as if mine hadn't just imploded. My phone rang at 7. Marcus Ashford, my attorney. I'm assuming you've seen the messages, he said without preamble. What messages? Check your email. Victor's attorney filed a motion last night requesting an emergency hearing to unfreeze the accounts. They're claiming financial hardship and asserting that the Prenup's fidelity clause is invalid. I opened my laptop, pulled up my email. The motion was there, 10 pages of legal language that boiled down to, Catherine is being vindictive and we need money now. Can they do that? They can try. We have a hearing scheduled for Tuesday morning. Judge Morrison. She's fair but no nonsense. We'll present our evidence, they'll present their arguments, and she'll make a ruling. What are our chances? With the documentation you provided? Excellent. The prenup is ironclad. The affair is proven. The financial deception is clear. But be prepared. Victor's attorney is going to try to paint you as a scorned wife seeking revenge rather than an injured party seeking justice. Let them try. There's something else. Victor's attorney has requested documentation of all your personal accounts and income sources. They're going to argue that you're hiding assets. I'm not hiding anything. Every penny I earn goes through our joint accounts or my business account, which I've already disclosed. I know, but they're fishing, trying to find anything they can use to make you look less sympathetic. Standard tactics in a contentious divorce. After Marcus hung up, I sat with my coffee and my laptop, reading through the motion Victor's attorney had filed. The language was aggressive, accusatory. Words like vindictive and manipulative and calculated appeared multiple times. They were painting me as the villain in our story, the cold wife who'd ambushed her husband at their daughter's graduation. The doorbell rang at 8:30. I wasn't expecting anyone, hadn't showered or changed out of the t-shirt and sweatpants I'd slept in. I checked the security camera Victor had insisted we install last year. Another expense I'd managed while he'd chased his dreams. Iris stood on the front porch, still wearing yesterday's dress, her makeup smudged, her hair escaping its careful updo. I opened the door. She walked past me without a word, straight to the kitchen, and sat at the table where we'd had 1,000 family breakfasts, where we discussed her college applications and first boyfriends and what she wanted to be when she grew up. Coffee. I offered. Answers. I poured 2 cups anyway. Sat across from her. Tried to find words for everything that needed to be said. Dad called me at 2 a.m, Iris began, her voice tight with control. He said you served him divorce papers out of spite, that you knew he was going to announce the separation, and you wanted to humiliate him, that you've been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy him publicly. What else did he say? That you're freezing him out of your joint accounts even though he needs money to live. That you're using some outdated prenup to steal everything he's worked for. That you're turning me against him. And what do you think? Her eyes filled with tears. I think my father announced at my graduation dinner that he was leaving my mother. I think you put an envelope on the table and walked out like you'd been expecting it. I think something happened that neither of you are being honest about, and I'm tired of being treated like a child who can't handle the truth. I pulled out my laptop, opened the folder I'd created months ago. What I'm about to show you is going to hurt. I need you to know that before I show you. Mom, your father has been having an affair with Natalie Wells for 14 months. He's been systematically moving money from our joint accounts into a secret account. He's been planning to leave me for over a year, timing it specifically to happen after your graduation, so you'd be out of the house and he wouldn't have to deal with the immediate fallout. Iris's face went pale. You're lying. I wish I was. I turned the laptop toward her. These are bank statements showing the transfers. These are credit card receipts for hotels, jewelry, dinners at restaurants I've never been to. These are text messages between your father and Natalie, planning their future together. Planning when to tell me, how to handle the separation, what apartment to rent. All of it documented over 14 months. She stared at the screen, scrolled through the evidence with shaking hands. I watched her face as she read the messages, watched the moment she understood that everything her father had told her was a lie. Oh my God. Her voice was barely a whisper. He was planning this the whole time. That trip to Seattle last fall was actually a weekend at the Grandview Resort with Natalie. The business dinners he kept having weren't business. Mom. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face now. Why didn't you tell me? Because you deserved to have one day that was about your achievement, not about your father's betrayal. Because I wanted you to graduate without this hanging over you. Because I'm your mother and protecting you has been my job for 22 years. She pushed the laptop away like it was contaminated. I don't understand. How could he do this? How could he lie to all of us for over a year? I don't know. I've been asking myself the same question for 3 months. 3 months. You've known for 3 months and you didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not until I had everything documented. Not until I'd talked to a lawyer. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. If I'd confronted him without proof, he would have hidden the evidence, denied everything, made me seem crazy or paranoid. Iris stood abruptly, started pacing the kitchen. And the prenup? What was he talking about? I explained the fidelity clause, the asset protection, what it meant for the divorce proceedings. Iris listened with her arms wrapped around herself, looking younger than 22, looking like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared. So he gets nothing? He gets his business, his personal possessions, and whatever he can prove he earned separately. But the house, the retirement accounts, most of our investments, those stay with me because he violated the terms of the agreement he insisted we signed 28 years ago. Good. The venom in her voice surprised both of us. I hope you take everything. I hope Natalie leaves him. I hope he ends up alone and broke and understands exactly what he threw away. Iris. No. Don't defend him. Don't tell me he's still my father, and I should forgive him or try to understand his perspective. He destroyed our family. He humiliated you in front of everyone we know. He lied to me for over a year. I don't want to understand his perspective. She collapsed back into her chair, put her head in her hands. I believed him. Last night, when he called, I actually believed him when he said you were being vindictive. I thought you'd ambushed him, that you were the one being cruel. And now I find out he's been planning this for 14 months while you were just trying to protect yourself. You believed him because he's your father. That's not a character flaw. That's just love. It feels like a flaw now. We sat in silence for a while. The coffee went cold. The sun climbed higher. From somewhere down the street came the sound of a lawnmower, someone starting their Saturday with normal tasks, unaware that 2 houses away, a family was dissolving. What happens now? Iris finally asked. Now we have a court hearing on Tuesday. Victor's attorney is trying to get the account freeze lifted. My attorney doesn't think they'll succeed, but we'll see. After that, it's a matter of working through the divorce proceedings. Could take months. Where's Dad going to live? I don't know. That's his problem to solve. Mom, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry. Not anymore. I'm just done. Iris studied my face. You really are, aren't you? You're completely done with him. 28 years, Iris. 28 years of managing finances while he chased dreams. Of postponing my own career so he could reinvent himself every few years. Of believing in partnership while he planned his exit. Yes, I'm done. I've been done since the night I found the first bank transfer and realized the man I'd been sleeping next to was a stranger. That's so sad. No. What's sad is wasting more years on someone who checked out of the marriage over a year ago. What's sad is pretending everything's fine when it's not. I'm not sad, Iris. I'm relieved. My phone buzzed. Diana, are you okay? Is Iris with you? I texted back, we're fine. Talking. Another text, this time from a number I didn't recognize. This is Natalie. I'm leaving. You were right. I'm sorry. I showed Iris the message. She read it and something dark crossed her face. She should be sorry. She's 29 and she believed a liar. I was 26 when I married your father. I don't get to judge someone else's bad choices when I made plenty of my own. Marrying Dad wasn't a bad choice. He's the one who broke his promises. Maybe. But I'm the one who ignored red flags for years because it was easier than confronting problems. I'm the one who let my career ambitions slide because his dreams always seemed more urgent. I'm complicit in how small I became in my own marriage. Iris reached across the table and took my hand. You were never small, Mom. You were the only reason any of Dad's ventures didn't completely collapse. You were the reason I got to go to a good school and have opportunities. You were the stable one, the practical one, the one who held everything together while he played entrepreneur. And resented me for it, apparently. Then he's an idiot. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound felt strange in the quiet kitchen, rusty from disuse. He's your father. Right now, I'm not sure I want to claim him. We spent the rest of the morning going through practical matters. Iris needed to move her things from the apartment she'd been planning to share with roommates. Victor had promised to help with first and last month's rent, a promise he obviously couldn't keep now. We made a list of what she'd need, calculated costs, figured out what I could contribute without depleting my own accounts. Around noon, Diana showed up with lunch. Sandwiches from the deli we all liked, the one that made their bread fresh every morning. We sat around the kitchen table like we'd done countless times before, except Victor's chair was empty and nobody mentioned it. Victor's called me 4 times this morning, Diana said, unwrapping her sandwich. I haven't answered. What does he want? Iris asked. Probably wants me to convince Catherine to unfreeze the accounts. Or to tell him Catherine's being unreasonable. Or to play mediator. Not interested in any of those roles. He's your brother. And Catherine's my sister. But even if she wasn't, I'd still be on her side. What he did was indefensible. My phone rang. Victor's number. I sent it to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Answer it, Diana said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. I answered, put the phone on speaker, set it in the middle of the table. Catherine. Victor's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not on the phone. In person. There are things we need to discuss that can't wait until Tuesday's hearing. Such as the fact that you've completely overreacted. Such as the fact that we can still handle this privately, without lawyers and court dates and public humiliation. Iris made a noise, half laugh, half disbelief. Victor must have heard it. Is someone there with you? Diana and Iris, I said. You're on speaker. Silence. Then, this is a private conversation between husband and wife. We're not having a private conversation. You lost that privilege when you spent 14 months planning your exit while sleeping in my bed. Catherine, please. I'm asking you to unfreeze the accounts. I need access to our money. Our money. Interesting that it's our money when you need it, but it was your money when you were spending it on Natalie. That was different. It was theft. Systematic, calculated theft from our joint accounts. I was planning to pay it back. With what? Your business that loses money every month? Victor, I've been subsidizing your entrepreneurial dreams for 2 years. Without my income, you're broke. And now you're upset that I'm not letting you keep spending money you didn't earn on a life you're not entitled to. You're punishing me for being honest. For finally admitting that our marriage wasn't working. Iris leaned forward. Dad, you weren't honest. You had an affair for over a year. You moved money into secret accounts. You planned your entire exit strategy behind Mom's back. That's not honesty. That's betrayal. Iris, sweetheart, you don't understand. Don't call me sweetheart. And I understand perfectly. I've seen the bank statements. I've read your text messages with Natalie. I know exactly what you did. Another silence. Catherine, what have you told her? The truth. Something you seem to have trouble with. You showed our daughter private financial information to turn her against me? I showed our adult daughter evidence of your affair and financial deception because she deserved to know why her father destroyed our family at her graduation dinner. I want to see her. Iris, I want to explain my side. I don't want to see you. Iris cut in, her voice shaking. I don't want your explanations or your excuses. You humiliated Mom. You humiliated me. And now you're calling here demanding access to money you stole so you can continue funding your affair. I don't have anything to say to you. Iris. She grabbed the phone, took it off speaker, held it to her ear. I need time, Dad. A lot of time. Don't call me. Don't show up at my apartment. When I'm ready to talk to you, I'll reach out. Until then, leave me alone. She hung up, set the phone down with shaking hands, looked at both of us with tears streaming down her face. Did I just disown my father? You set boundaries, Diana said gently. That's different. It doesn't feel different. I pulled Iris into a hug. She collapsed against me, 22 years old but feeling like my little girl again, the one who'd skinned her knee and needed her mother to make it better. Except I couldn't make this better. I could only hold her while she cried. Diana's phone rang. She looked at the screen and sighed. It's Victor. Guess he's working his way through the family. Don't answer, I said. Oh, I'm going to answer. She picked up. Victor, what do you want? Even without speakerphone, we could hear him yelling. Diana held the phone away from her ear, let him vent, then brought it back. Are you done? Good. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop calling your daughter. You're going to stop calling your wife. You're going to accept that you made terrible choices, and now you're facing consequences. And if you call me one more time asking me to intervene, I'm going to tell Mom exactly what you did and let her deal with you. She hung up. Your mother was our mother, 78 years old, living in Arizona, with strong opinions about family loyalty and marriage. Victor was terrified of disappointing her. You wouldn't, I said. Watch me. He's acting like a child. Maybe Mom can remind him how to be an adult. What's the hardest conversation you've ever had to have with family? Share your story below and hit that subscribe button for more real talk about life's difficult moments. The weekend passed in a strange blur of hyperactivity and numbness. Iris stayed with me, sleeping in her old room, the one we'd redecorated when she was 16 and wanted something more mature than the pink walls and boy band posters of her childhood. Diana came and went, bringing food we barely ate, sitting with us through movies we didn't watch, her presence a buffer against the silence that kept threatening to swallow everything. Sunday afternoon, I went to my office. The practice I'd built slowly over the years, helping clients navigate financial transitions, retirement, inheritance, starting businesses. The work I'd always done on the side while managing Victor's chaos. The career I'd never quite prioritized because his dreams had always seemed more urgent than mine. The space was small but mine. A converted storefront in the downtown business district, with my name on the door in simple lettering. Catherine Monroe, financial consultant. I sat at my desk and looked at my calendar for the coming week. 3 client meetings scheduled. A retirement planning session. A widow needing help managing her late husband's estate. A young couple thinking about buying their first home. Normal work. Normal problems. Numbers and spreadsheets and practical solutions to navigable challenges. My phone buzzed. Marcus Ashford, heads up. Victor's attorney just filed an amended motion. They're requesting emergency spousal support, claiming he has no access to funds and nowhere to live. I typed back. He has a business account and a girlfriend with an apartment. That's essentially what we'll argue. But be prepared for them to paint him as destitute. He is destitute because he spent our money on his affair. Exactly. See you Tuesday at 9. Courthouse, 3rd floor. I set the phone down and pulled up my files on Victor's business. 2 years of tax returns, profit and loss statements, bank records. His consulting business, helping small companies with strategic planning, had never turned a real profit. Some quarters showed modest income, but it was never enough to cover his expenses. I'd been subsidizing it with my earnings, telling myself it was what partners did, that his success would eventually come, that supporting his dreams was an investment in our future. Our future. What a joke. I spent Sunday evening preparing for Tuesday's hearing. Marcus had sent over the arguments Victor's attorney would likely make, and I wanted to be ready. They'd claim the affair was a symptom of a broken marriage, not the cause. They'd argue that freezing the accounts was vindictive rather than protective. They'd paint me as cold and calculating, Victor as the victim of a wife who'd never appreciated his entrepreneurial spirit. Let them try. Monday morning, Iris came with me to the office. She'd taken the week off from her new job. Hadn't even started yet, really, just had the offer letter and a start date that was suddenly complicated by family implosion. She sat in my client chair, across the desk, looking lost. What am I supposed to do? She asked. With Dad, I mean. Do I just never talk to him again? Do I eventually forgive him? What does this look like? I don't know, sweetheart. That's your decision to make. But you must have an opinion. I thought about it. About Victor and the 28 years we'd shared, and the way love could calcify into obligation without you noticing until it was too late. I think you need to do whatever lets you sleep at night. If that means talking to him, talk to him. If it means taking space, take space. But don't forgive him because you think you're supposed to. Forgive him if and when it feels right, not because he's your father and society says daughters should forgive their fathers. Did you love him? Really love him? The question caught me off guard. Yes, once. A long time ago. When did it stop? I don't know. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 small moments where I chose to ignore problems because confronting them felt too hard. It was years of making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. It was the slow erosion of partnership into something that looked like marriage, but felt like elaborate pretending. That's depressing. It's honest. My first client of the day arrived at 10. Martha Chun. No relation to Daniel and Rachel. The Chens who'd sat at Iris's graduation dinner and watched my marriage implode. Martha was 67, recently widowed, overwhelmed by the financial labyrinth her husband had left behind. Insurance policies and retirement accounts and investments she'd never paid attention to because Harold had handled all of it. I feel so stupid, she said, sitting across from me with a folder full of documents. 43 years of marriage, and I don't even know how much money we have. You're not stupid. You trusted your partner to handle certain things while you handled others. That's normal. But look where it got me. Sitting in your office at 67 trying to learn things I should have known all along. I thought about myself at 54, sitting in Marcus Ashford's office with evidence of my husband's affair, trying to untangle finances I'd been managing but not fully controlling. It's never too late to learn. And you're here now, asking questions, taking control. That's what matters. We spent 2 hours going through Harold's estate. It was complicated but not hopeless. By the end, Martha had a clear picture of her financial situation and a plan for moving forward. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. After she left, Iris said, "You're really good at this." At what? Making people feel less alone, less stupid, like their problems are solvable. Most problems are solvable. It's the emotions around them that are complicated. Is your problem solvable? My problem is already solved. The divorce papers are filed. The accounts are frozen. The evidence is documented. Now it's just a matter of letting the legal process play out. But what about after? What does your life look like when this is over? I looked around my small office. At the desk I'd bought secondhand 7 years ago. At the filing cabinets full of other people's hopes and fears translated into numbers. At the window overlooking the street where people walked past, each carrying their own invisible burdens. I don't know, I admitted. I've spent so long being Victor's wife and your mother that I'm not sure who Catherine is without those definitions. That's scary. Yes, but also maybe exciting. Iris smiled, small but genuine. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. I am. That evening, Diana came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. We decided impending divorce counted as special enough. We ate on the back porch, watching the sun set over our suburban neighborhood, listening to the sounds of other people's normal lives continuing around us. I talked to Mom, Diana said, meaning our mother in Arizona. Told her about Victor. How'd she take it? About how you'd expect. Shocked, angry, wanting to fly up here and murder him herself. I talked her out of that last part. Thank you. She wants to talk to you. When you're ready. I wasn't ready. My mother had loved Victor, had welcomed him into the family like the son she'd never had. Telling her about the affair and the betrayal meant watching another relationship die, another piece of the life I'd built crumble into dust. Soon, I said. After the hearing. She asked if you were okay. I told her you were handling it. Am I? Diana studied me in the fading light. I honestly can't tell. You're either the most emotionally resilient person I've ever met, or you're having a breakdown in slow motion. Maybe both. Catherine, seriously. Are you okay? I thought about the question. About the hollow space where my marriage used to be. About the strange lightness that came from not having to pretend anymore. About the fear that kept me awake at 3 a.m, wondering who I was without the roles I'd played for nearly 30 years. I will be, I said. Eventually. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Tuesday morning arrived with rain. Not the gentle kind, but the aggressive summer storm that turned streets into rivers and made the courthouse parking lot an obstacle course of puddles. I wore my navy suit, the one I saved for important client meetings. Sensible heels. Hair pulled back. The armor of professional competence. Marcus met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Ready, as I'll ever be. Victor's attorney is aggressive but inexperienced in family law. She's used to corporate litigation, all bluster and intimidation. Judge Morrison won't respond well to that. Good. We entered the courtroom. Victor was already there, sitting with his attorney, a woman in her early 40s with severe glasses and an expensive briefcase. He looked haggard. 3 days of stress had carved new lines around his mouth, and his suit, the same one he'd worn to Iris's graduation, looked slept in. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away first. Judge Morrison was exactly as Marcus had described. Late 50s, no-nonsense expression, the kind of person who'd seen every divorce trick and wouldn't tolerate games. She took her seat, reviewed the documents in front of her, and looked up. This is a preliminary hearing regarding the motion filed by Victor Monroe requesting emergency relief from account freezes and requesting temporary spousal support. Ms. Peterson, you're representing Mr. Monroe? Victor's attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor. My client is suffering immediate financial hardship due to his wife's vindictive actions. Mrs. Monroe has frozen all joint accounts, leaving Mr. Monroe unable to access funds for basic living expenses. He has no access to their marital home, no ability to support himself, and nowhere to live. We're requesting that the court order the accounts unfrozen and establish temporary spousal support until the divorce proceedings are finalized. Mr. Ashford? Marcus stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Monroe's actions are not vindictive but protective. Mr. Monroe engaged in a 14-month affair during which he systematically transferred nearly $60,000 from their joint accounts into a secret account. He used marital funds to finance his relationship with another woman, including expensive dinners, jewelry, and hotel stays. The prenuptial agreement signed by both parties includes a fidelity clause that invalidates Mr. Monroe's claim to the majority of marital assets. The account freeze is to prevent further unauthorized transfers while the court determines asset division. Judge Morrison looked at Victor. Mr. Monroe, did you have an affair? Victor stood slowly. Your Honor, my marriage to Catherine had been deteriorating for years. We'd grown apart. The relationship with Ms. Wells was a symptom of our marital problems, not the cause. That's not what I asked. Did you engage in an extramarital relationship? Yes, but. And did you transfer funds from joint accounts without your wife's knowledge or consent? Victor's jaw tightened. I moved money into a personal account, yes, but I was planning to use it for. Without your wife's knowledge or consent? Yes. Judge Morrison turned to Marcus. The prenuptial agreement. Let me see it. Marcus handed over the document. The judge read it carefully, taking her time. The courtroom was silent except for the rain against the windows. I kept my hands folded in my lap, my expression neutral. Professional. Calm. Paragraph 7 is very clear, Judge Morrison finally said. The fidelity clause states that in the event of proven adultery, the offending party forfeits their rights to the marital home, retirement accounts, and the majority of joint investments. Mr. Monroe, this is your signature? Yes, but Your Honor, that agreement is 28 years old. Circumstances have changed. The agreement states it remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. You're still married, correct? Technically, yes, but. Then the agreement stands. Ms. Peterson, your client signed a legally binding document that explicitly addresses this exact situation. The fidelity clause is enforceable. Victor's attorney tried again. Your Honor, my client has no access to any funds. He can't even afford basic necessities. What about his business accounts? Silence from Victor's side of the room. Mr. Monroe, you operate a consulting business, correct? You have business accounts. Yes, Your Honor, but those accounts have limited funds. How limited? Victor looked at his attorney, who shuffled papers. Approximately $8,000. That seems sufficient for basic necessities while these proceedings continue. The account freeze will remain in place. As for spousal support, Judge Morrison looked back at the documents. Mrs. Monroe has been the primary income earner for the past 2 years while subsidizing Mr. Monroe's business. Given the circumstances, the affair, the unauthorized transfers, the fidelity clause violation, I'm denying the request for spousal support at this time. We'll revisit the issue during the formal divorce proceedings if circumstances change significantly. Your Honor, Victor's attorney tried to object. My ruling stands. The court will reconvene in 30 days for full financial disclosure hearings. Mr. Monroe will provide complete documentation of all accounts, assets, and income sources. Mrs. Monroe will do the same. Until then, the freeze remains in effect, and Mr. Monroe will survive on his business funds and find his own accommodations. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. Victor's face went red, then white. His attorney was already gathering papers, clearly unhappy with the outcome. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt, breathing for what felt like the first time in an hour. Marcus touched my elbow. Well done. You didn't react once. I've had practice controlling my reactions. Outside the courtroom, Victor cornered us in the hallway. Catherine, please. We need to talk. No, we don't. The judge made her ruling. You have business funds. Figure it out. $8,000 won't last a month. Then you'll need to be very careful with your spending. Maybe skip the expensive restaurants and jewelry stores. His face twisted. You're enjoying this. You're enjoying watching me suffer. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm just no longer suffering with you. I walked away, down the courthouse stairs, through the rain to my car, with Marcus beside me holding an umbrella neither of us remembered to open until we were already soaked. I sat in the driver's seat with water dripping down my face and started laughing. You okay? Marcus asked. I won. We won. The accounts stay frozen. He gets nothing. Preliminary victory. The real work comes in 30 days. Let it come. I'm ready. I drove home in the rain, hands steady on the wheel, mind already moving forward. 30 days to gather more documentation. 30 days for Victor to realize exactly what he'd lost. 30 days until the next hearing when we'd start the formal process of dividing a life I'd already emotionally left behind. At home, Iris was waiting on the porch. She ran to the car as I pulled up, not caring about the rain. Well, the freeze stays. The judge upheld the prenup. Victor gets nothing until the full proceedings. Iris hugged me, hard and fierce. Good. That's good, right? Yes. That's very good. We went inside. I changed into dry clothes. Made tea. Sat at the kitchen table while Iris peppered me with questions about the hearing. And somewhere in the middle of explaining Judge Morrison's ruling, I realized I was smiling. Actually smiling. Not because Victor was suffering, but because I wasn't anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Natalie. I moved out yesterday. Took your advice. Thank you. I showed Iris, who read it and shook her head. She's thanking you for relationship advice after sleeping with your husband. That's insane. She's young and she made a mistake. At least she's correcting it. You're too forgiving. No, I'm just tired of being angry. Anger takes energy I don't have to spare. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Kept replaying the hearing in my mind. Judge Morrison's face when she'd read the prenup. Victor's expression when the ruling went against him. The way it had felt to walk out of that courthouse knowing I'd protected myself, that the months of preparation had mattered. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went to my office. Turned on the computer. Started drafting a business plan for something I'd been thinking about since the night Victor left. A financial consultancy specializing in helping women through major life transitions. Divorce, widowhood, career changes, retirement. Taking the work I'd been doing part-time and building it into something real. Something mine. I worked until dawn, filling pages with projections and goals and timelines. When the sun came up, I had a plan. Rough, incomplete, but tangible. Something to build toward instead of just running from. Iris found me at the kitchen table surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. Did you sleep at all? A little. Maybe. Does working count as resting? Mom, you need to take care of yourself. I am. This is taking care of myself. This is building something that matters. She looked at the papers, the business plan, the timeline I'd sketched out. You're really doing this. Starting your own firm. I really am. When? As soon as the divorce is finalized. I want to start clean. New business, new life, new everything. That's kind of terrifying. Yes, I agreed. But staying in the wreckage is worse. 6 months later, I stood in front of a storefront with floor-to-ceiling windows and a freshly painted sign, Monroe Financial Transitions. The space was larger than my old office, in a better part of downtown, with room for the 2 associates I'd hired and the receptionist who'd start next week. The walls were painted a soft cream, professional but warm. My desk, new not secondhand, faced the window overlooking the street where people hurried past with coffee cups and briefcases and the urgent purpose of Monday mornings. "It's perfect," Diana said beside me. She'd help me pick out furniture, choose paint colors, interview candidates. My sister, who'd been there through every impossible moment, who'd held me up when I couldn't stand on my own. "It's terrifying. Also perfect." The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. Not on what would have been our 29th anniversary, though it had come close. The final hearing had been anticlimactic after the preliminary one. Judge Morrison had upheld every aspect of the prenuptial agreement. I kept the house, the retirement accounts, 70% of our investments. Victor kept his failing consulting business, his personal belongings, and a bitter understanding that actions have consequences. He'd tried one last time, in the courthouse hallway after the judge's final ruling. Grabbed my arm as I walked past, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Catherine, please. We can still fix this. We don't have to end like this." I'd looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. "Victor, we ended over a year ago. You just didn't tell me. I made a mistake. I know that now. Natalie's gone, the business is struggling, I've lost everything. You lost everything because you threw it away. Not because I took it. I'm asking for another chance. And I'm saying no." I'd pulled my arm free. "I spent 28 years being your safety net. I'm done catching you when you fall." He'd stood there in the hallway, looking smaller somehow, diminished. The confident man who'd announced our separation at a graduation dinner had been replaced by someone who finally understood the difference between leaving and being left. Iris had been there, watching from a distance. She'd been seeing a therapist, working through her feelings about her father, about the divorce, about what family meant when the foundation cracked. She still wasn't ready to talk to Victor. Maybe someday. Maybe never. "He looks pathetic," she'd said as we left the courthouse. "He looks like someone facing the consequences of his choices. Do you feel bad for him?" I'd thought about it, tried to find sympathy or regret or any of the emotions I'd expected to feel. No, I feel relieved. And that probably makes me cold, but I've stopped apologizing for protecting myself. Now, standing in my new office, I felt that relief expand into something bigger. Not just freedom from Victor, but freedom to become whoever I was supposed to be next. Catherine Monroe, not wife or mother first, but woman, entrepreneur, professional. All the things I'd been in the margins, now centered. My phone rang. My first official client appointment in the new space. A woman named Sarah, 43, recently divorced, needing help understanding the financial settlement she'd signed without really reading. We'd talked on the phone last week. She'd cried. I'd listened. I'd promised her we'd figure it out together. She arrived 10 minutes early, nervous, apologizing for everything. For being early, for not understanding finances, for taking up my time. I recognized that apologetic energy. I'd worn it myself for years, making myself small so others could be comfortable. "You don't need to apologize," I told her, showing her to my office. "You're here. That's what matters." We spent 2 hours going through her settlement. It was worse than she'd realized. Her ex-husband had hidden assets, undervalued properties, structured everything so he kept the majority while she got barely enough to survive. She'd signed it because he'd told her to trust him, because she'd been too overwhelmed to question, because sometimes fear makes you agree to things you shouldn't. "Can I fix this?" she asked, tears on her face. "Is it too late?" It's never too late to ask questions, to demand answers, to protect yourself. We made a plan, a real one, with steps and timelines and clear objectives. By the time Sarah left, she was still scared but no longer helpless. She had information. She had direction. She had someone in her corner. After she left, I sat at my desk and let myself feel the weight of what I was building. Not just a business, but a lifeline for women who'd lost themselves in marriages that demanded everything and gave back nothing. Women like I'd been. Women like Sarah still was. Diana knocked on my open door. "How'd it go?" "Her ex-husband is a piece of work. But we'll handle it. You're really good at this." I should be. I lived it. That evening, Iris came by the office. She'd started her new job 3 months ago, was living in an apartment with roommates she actually liked, was building a life that had nothing to do with her parents' divorce. She looked healthy. Happy even. This place is amazing, Mom. You think so? I know so. You're going to help so many people. We went to dinner at a small Italian place near my house. My house now, legally and emotionally. Every room had been reclaimed. I'd repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture, removed every trace of Victor until it was just mine. Some nights I still woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, muscle memory from 28 years. But those nights were getting less frequent. Over pasta and wine, Iris asked the question I'd been expecting. Have you thought about dating? God, no. Why not? Because I've been married or in a relationship since I was 26. I don't even know who I am alone yet. Fair. But eventually maybe. But not now. Now I'm learning how to be just Catherine. Not Catherine and Victor. Not Catherine the wife. Just me. And how's that going? It's lonely sometimes. And scary. But also kind of amazing. Iris smiled. That genuine smile that reminded me why all of this had been worth it. I'm proud of you, Mom. For leaving. For building this business. For not letting Dad's betrayal make you small. I'm proud of you too. For handling this with more grace than I had at 22. For setting boundaries with your father. For not making his mistakes your burden to carry. Have you heard from him? Not in 3 weeks. Last I heard, he was living with a friend from his business networking group. The consulting firm is barely surviving. But that's not my problem anymore. Does that feel strange? Not worrying about him. It feels like exhaling after holding my breath for 28 years. We finished dinner. Iris hugged me goodbye in the parking lot, holding on longer than usual. I love you, Mom. Thank you for being strong enough to leave. I love you too, baby. And I didn't leave because I was strong. I left because staying would have killed me. At home, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the back porch. The neighborhood was quiet, settling into evening routines. Somewhere down the street, someone was grilling. The smell of charcoal and summer drifted through the air. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Ashford. Saw your new office today. Looks great. Congratulations on everything. I texted back. Thank you for getting me here. You got yourself here. I just filed the paperwork. I thought about that. About the night I'd found those bank transfers and made the choice to investigate instead of confront. About the 3 months I'd spent building a case while performing normalcy. About the envelope I'd placed beside Victor's plate at a graduation dinner that felt like it happened in another lifetime. I'd gotten myself here. Through preparation, through strategy, through refusing to be a victim even when victimhood would have been easier. I'd saved myself. And now I was in a position to help other women do the same. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Hi, this is Martha Chin. Remember me? The widow whose husband left everything a mess? I wanted you to know I just signed papers to buy my own place. A condo by the lake. I'm doing it. Thank you for showing me I could. I smiled at my phone, typed back. That's wonderful, Martha. You should be so proud. I am. And it's because of you. Not because of me. Because of herself. I'd just shown her the tools were there if she was brave enough to use them. The same way I'd had to learn to use them myself. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I sat on my porch, my house, my life, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but contentment, peace, the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. Catherine Monroe? Speaking. My name is Jennifer. I got your name from Sarah Richards. She said you helped her understand her divorce settlement, that you made her feel less alone. I'm wondering if you might be able to help me too. Tell me what's going on. And she did. Another woman. Another story of betrayal and confusion and not knowing how to move forward. I listened, took notes, made an appointment for Wednesday morning. After we hung up, I sat with my wine and my phone in the growing dark, thinking about all the women like Sarah and Jennifer and Martha. Women who'd been told their worth was tied to their relationships, who'd made themselves small to fit into marriages that couldn't hold them, who were now standing in the wreckage wondering how to rebuild. I couldn't fix their marriages, couldn't undo their betrayals, couldn't make the pain go away, but I could show them the tools, could help them understand their finances, protect their assets, build plans for futures that looked different than they'd expected, but were no less valuable. I could be the person I'd needed 6 months ago, standing in a restaurant with an envelope in my purse and terror in my chest. Iris called as I was heading inside. Forgot to tell you, Dad reached out today. My stomach tightened. And I told him I'd meet him for coffee next week. Not to forgive him. Not to rebuild our relationship. Just to hear what he has to say. How do you feel about that? Terrified. But my therapist says I can't heal if I'm still avoiding. So I'm trying not to avoid. I'm proud of you. Are you angry that I'm meeting with him? No, sweetheart. He's your father. You get to define that relationship however you need to. My divorce from him doesn't have to be your divorce from him. Thanks, Mom. That helps. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, remodeled last month, new countertops and paint, everything fresh in mine, and thought about Victor. About the man I'd married at 26 and the stranger he'd become. About whether I hated him or pitied him or just felt nothing. The answer was complicated. I didn't hate him. Hate required energy I wasn't willing to spend. But I didn't miss him either. Didn't miss the constant worry about money, the feeling of being invisible in my own marriage, the exhaustion of managing someone else's dreams while mine gathered dust. What I felt mostly was grateful. Grateful he'd been stupid enough to leave a paper trail. Grateful for the prenuptial agreement he'd insisted on signing. Grateful that his betrayal had finally given me permission to stop pretending everything was fine. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Diana. Dinner this weekend? Want to celebrate your new office properly. Absolutely. Your place or mine? Yours. I want to see what you've done with the bedroom. I smiled. My sister, who'd seen me at my lowest and never once suggested I should forgive, forget, or make things easier for the man who destroyed our family. Diana, who'd understood that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was witness someone else's pain without trying to fix it. I poured another glass of wine, turned on music, sat in my living room. Repainted in colors Victor had hated, furnished with pieces I'd chosen alone, and let myself feel the full weight of where I was. 54 years old, divorced, starting over, and somehow impossibly happy. Not the happiness of ignorance or denial, but the hard-won happiness of someone who'd walked through fire and come out alive on the other side. Scarred, yes. Changed, absolutely. But alive. The envelope I'd placed beside Victor's plate 6 months ago hadn't been just divorce papers. It had been a declaration, a statement, a promise to myself that I would no longer accept less than I deserved. And now, sitting in my reclaimed house, running my own business, helping women find their way through the same darkness I'd survived. Now I was keeping that promise. Victor had thought leaving me would set him free. Instead, it had set me free. Free from managing his chaos. Free from making myself small. Free from the exhausting performance of pretending a dead marriage was still alive. The rain started again, soft against the windows. I turned off the lights and sat in the semi-dark, listening to the storm, feeling the peace that came from finally being home in my own life. My phone glowed with a new email. The subject line read, "Inquiry about financial consulting services." I opened it. Another woman. Another story. Another chance to help someone find their way. I typed a response, my fingers steady, my mind clear. I'd be happy to help. Let's schedule a consultation. And then, because it felt important, I added, "You're not alone. Whatever you're facing, you're not alone." I hit send. Outside, the storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning illuminated my living room in brief, stark flashes. But inside, I was warm, safe, whole. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Not Victor's wife. Not just Iris's mother. But Catherine. Just Catherine. And that, I was learning, was more than enough. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about resilience, reinvention, and finding yourself after loss. Drop a comment below sharing your own journey. Whether you're still in the storm or you've made it to the other side, your story matters. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Sometimes the best gift we can give is reminding someone that their ending can become their beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life.